What's going on, party people? Why did I say that? Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well today. I know I've had a few months where I've been remarkably silent. As you can tell from my accoutrements, nothing has changed, and yet everything has changed. Life is decent, man. I'm healthy. That's really important. Family is healthy. It's been hectic, very hectic. I'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes, but that'll be for you guys in a couple of episodes. I want to tackle a couple of subjects today. I think the one I want to start off with is, of course, what's going on? I mean, a lot of people are talking about it. I'm not going to get into a wider discussion of macroeconomic policy, but certainly let's talk about what's the play here. Why is there this escalating economic and monetary disagreement going on between our friends to the south, who have elected Senor Orange to sit in an office that is an oval, and the rest of the world. I'm not going to say that things were perfect. They weren't. I'm not going to say that things were fair. I don't think they were. Do I think that there has been a system that has been jury-rigged to benefit the very few? I mean, everybody says it, right? Like, the system doesn't work anymore. It broke, and it serves only one set of very, very hyper-wealthy people. And I know a lot of people thought that the man with the small hands would come in and either deliberately or quite not deliberately, in a fit of uncontrollable narcissism, that he would break everything and somehow reset that broken system. That could have been predicted that wouldn't happen. The people that are running the show have essentially leased that government for a few years. On that front, the people that do run the system are trying to make a hat trick right now go happen. They're trying to have a 3 for 3, and it started. I mean, the first major push that in my lifetime that I saw was in 2008, the big housing bubble crash and the big financial crisis. The powers that be at the time thought, everybody's hurting, let's inject some money into the government, into the economy. That is, the government's invested a lot. And it only ended up that those who were wealthy enough to buy everything at very discounted prices, right? Because everything was going down in value. They ended up buying everything at very discounted prices, even though their own portfolios were worth not a lot. They bought everything at discounted prices, and then when the markets came back up, when the government sent all that money out, they became much wealthier than they were even before the crisis. The second play in my mind was, the pandemic. Nobody knew what was happening. Markets don't just so people understand, the reason that you hear about markets going up and down and up and down. It's either on good news or bad news, and it's information and it's stability. Stability is really important, and when things become unknown, they are considered to be unstable, and that's where markets become very fragile. So again, during the pandemic, everything went down in value, and then, yeah, the very rich took a hit on their portfolios, sure, but they had enough money to buy everything while it was cheap. And again, things go back up, stability returns, the engine starts running again, and they own even more than they did after the financial crisis. And in my mind, this is the first time we've seen where there is a deliberate push to destabilize things by the very rich in order to do this in a 3-for-3. So what we're seeing is an artificial problem being created that they have complete control to turn on and off. But the idea is to, again, devalue everything, buy it up, and again, own more than they did before at higher prices. The more they own, of course, the more that they can squeeze on people like you and me. Because if before, let's say, just as an example, they owned 70% of the grocery stores, and after a crisis like this, they own 80% of the grocery stores, they can just start, speaking as a Canadian that's gone through the grocery store scandal, they can just keep pushing prices up, and there's no one to compete with them to tell them otherwise. That's where you get into a monopoly. So what I'm trying to get at is, if you have $100 billion and you lose $40 billion, you've lost $40 billion. It's an almost inconceivable number. But you still have $60 billion. It's still an inconceivable number. After losing all that money, you still have enough money for 100 lifetimes for you and your entire family. It makes no difference that you lost $40 billion. However, if you have $100,000, and that for a lot of people is a stretch when they live paycheck to paycheck, and you lose $40,000, that's a lot of money. You only have $60,000 left, and you just have to look today. Your car explodes or something. Easily half that money is gone trying to get a small new car, like a little Honda or a little Toyota. That'll run you $30,000 once you add in the taxes and the insurance and the this and the that. There goes half your nest egg gone because your car blew up, because, life happens, If you have $10,000, you just need a bad leak in your house or a blown heat pump or something. Or you need an asshole landlord that just jacks your rent by $150 a month, and suddenly that $10,000 that you lost $4,000 on, you only have $6 left. That little nest egg that you put together, it's a lot less, and it takes very little to wipe out $6,000 these days. It takes almost nothing. There are cars that a set of wheels will cost you $6,000, So it's a play by people that have completely dissociated their actions from the consequences on others, that have an almost sociopathic lack of empathy for others, that this is happening. And then, in the world's most unsurprising turn of events, you have a guy like the United Healthcare CEO gets gunned down in the street and no one cares, because he's seen as part of the problem. I guess I'll end it on saying, there's a moment of inflection here where, again, I'm not talking completely abstractly. This happened in France in the 1700s. the aristocracy, the very wealthy, the lords and the ladies, the dukes and the duchesses, and the king, were monopolizing the rest of the population, the peasants, to the point where the peasants were starving, and they were being taxed so heavily they couldn't feed themselves. And the aristocracy didn't seem to think there was a problem. And the famous thing that was said by, I believe it was Marie Antoinette, was, she's in the carriage passing the peasants, and why are they starving, she asks. And one of the counselors or the ladies in waiting or somebody responds, because they're starving, or because they have no money, they have nothing. And she responds, let them eat cake. That's where that saying comes from. She didn't understand that these people didn't have money for cake. They didn't have money for anything. And how does that turn out? Well, historically, the French eventually overthrew the king. And you had a reign of terror, and people were beheaded left and right. And that was not a good period. It was a period that ended up building the French Republic. But it was not something that I would personally want to live through. There was rife paranoia. People were being accused of being sympathizers and loyalists and royalists, and even if they weren't, if somebody high up enough in the rebellion had a problem with you, they'd just declare you a royalist and they'd have you beheaded. It was the law of the mob, famously, right? So I just don't want to see that happen. There needs to be some sort of correction here, where it's not like the Americans set the kind of set the tone, because I think it's the most obvious and the most reported about and the most talked about in the United States. But it's happening. It's been happening since the fall of the Berlin Wall in Russia and the former Soviet Union. It's happening in China. It's happening in most Western countries where you have this huge... It's happening in Canada. Galen Weston, the head of the Loblaws Corporation, being brought up in front of the House of Parliament to discuss the fact that why are you jacking grocery prices during a pandemic? And paraphrasing, but basically said, because I can. What are you going to do? I own 3/4 of the grocery stores in this country. What are you going to do about it? And the answer is not much. There's a point where I worry that there's going to be a lot of Luigis out there looking for United Healthcare CEOs. Because you can't push people too far. And the unfortunate thing is that the people running the show don't understand that fact. They don't understand where people are. They're dissociated. They're so rich they can't possibly understand. And remember that most of these mega billionaires were born extremely rich. They did not, yes, they worked psychotically hard. That's part of it. Like, they didn't get to that level because they sat on their butts. They accomplished a huge amount of things. But they weren't starting paycheck to paycheck. They were starting either with a family security net behind them, some sort of investment in their future. They were starting somewhere. They've never had to be empathetic to those that don't have. And I'm just wondering, as somebody who grew up privileged, whether we've passed that point of no return yet or not. I'm not sure. I mean, certainly having a guy with cognitive problems like Elon Musk sitting next to another person with mental problems like Donald Trump supposedly running the show. It doesn't seem like a good combination for a positive future. However, let me end on this, because I said I would end 5 minutes ago. We will make it through it. It may not be comfortable, but we will make it through it. That's it.